My brother thought he could steal my car while I was serving my country at boot camp. He sold my pride and joy, a restored 1995 Mustang GT that took me 3 years to save for, claiming he needed the money more than some soldier girl. But what he didn't expect was for military police to show up at his door with handcuffs. This is the story of how my own flesh and blood betrayed me, and how justice caught up with him in ways he never saw coming. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I'm Jessica Martinez, and this story begins 3 months before I shipped out to Fort Leonard Wood for Army basic training. I was 22, working double shifts at Henderson's Auto Parts in Bakersfield, California, saving every penny I could get my hands on. My dream wasn't just to serve my country. It was to do it while knowing I had something beautiful waiting for me back home. That something was a 1995 Ford Mustang GT in deep forest green. She wasn't much when I found her in a salvage yard outside Fresno, rust eating through the quarter panels, interior torn to shreds, engine that barely turned over. But I saw potential where others saw junk. For 3 years, I poured my heart, soul, and paycheck into that car. Every spare moment was spent in my tiny garage behind the duplex I shared with my older brother, Marcus. Marcus Martinez had always been the golden child in our family. 4 years older than me, he'd been the high school quarterback, the one who got into UC Davis on a partial scholarship, the one Mom and Dad bragged about to their friends at church. But somewhere between his sophomore year and graduation, things went sideways. The scholarship dried up when his grades tanked, and he came crawling back to Bakersfield with a business degree he never used, and an attitude that the world owed him something. While I was out there getting my hands dirty, learning about carburetors and timing belts, Marcus bounced from job to job. Sales positions that lasted 3 months, management trainee programs he quit because they were beneath him, get-rich-quick schemes that ate through what little money he managed to save. Our parents, God bless them, kept bailing him out. They'd slip him rent money, pay his car insurance, even buy his groceries when times got really tough. But me? I was expected to be independent. Jessica's got her head on straight, Dad would say. She doesn't need our help. And honestly, I preferred it that way. Every dollar I earned felt like mine. Every achievement was something I'd built with my own 2 hands. By the time I finished restoring the Mustang, she was absolutely gorgeous. I'd rebuilt the 5.0-liter V8 engine from the ground up, installed a new transmission, replaced every piece of weather stripping, and painted her myself in that original deep forest green with white racing stripes. The interior was black leather, not original, but it looked perfect. Chrome wheels, performance exhaust, and a sound system that could wake the neighbors 3 blocks over. That car represented everything I was proud of. 3 years of 60-hour work weeks, countless nights watching YouTube tutorials on engine, rebuilds, weekends spent at swap meets hunting for the perfect parts. She wasn't just transportation, she was proof that I could take something broken and make it beautiful. The decision to enlist came after a particularly frustrating week at Henderson's. My manager, a lazy slug named Tommy Kowalski, had passed me over for promotion again, giving the assistant manager position to his nephew who'd been there exactly 6 weeks. I was tired of being undervalued, tired of small-town politics, tired of watching less qualified people get ahead because of who they knew. I'd always respected the military. My grandfather served in Vietnam, came back and never talked about it much, but carried himself with a dignity that impressed me. The Army recruiter, Sergeant First Class Williams, painted a picture of technical training, leadership development, and opportunities I'd never get in Bakersfield. More importantly, the military would pay for college when I got out. "What about your car?" Marcus asked when I told him about enlisting. We were sitting in the garage, me wiping down the Mustangs. Chrome bumper, him nursing a beer and scrolling through his phone. "What about it?" You gonna just let it sit here for 4 months while you're playing soldier? I bristled at his tone. I'm not playing anything. And yes, I'll store it properly. Change the oil, put it on a battery tender, maybe have Thompson's. Garage check on it once a month? Seems like a waste, Marcus said, not looking up from his phone. All that money is just sitting there. It's not about the money. Everything's about money, Jess. You're just too naive to see it. That conversation happened in March. By June, I'd completed all my enlistment paperwork and was scheduled to ship out on August 15th. The closer my departure date got, the more excited I became. Basic training would be tough, but I was ready for it. I'd been running 5 miles every morning, doing push-ups and sit-ups until my muscles screamed, preparing mentally for the challenge ahead. The night before I left, I spent hours in that garage with my Mustang. I changed the oil, topped off all the fluids, and covered her with a breathable car cover I'd specially ordered from Summit Racing. I even wrote out detailed care instructions for Marcus, who'd agreed to start her up once a week and let her run for a few minutes. Take good care of her, I said, handing him the keys. She means everything to me. Marcus took the keys without much ceremony. Yeah, sure, she'll be fine. Our parents drove me to the bus station the next morning. Mom cried, Dad gave me one of his rare hugs, and Marcus showed up at the last minute looking hungover and irritated. Good luck, sis, he said, giving me a half-hearted hug. Try not to let the drill sergeants break you. The bus ride to Fort Leonard Wood was 6 hours of nervous energy and anticipation. I'd never been away from home for more than a weekend, never been anywhere where people didn't know my family or my history. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Basic training was exactly as advertised, brutal, exhausting, and transformative. Drill Sergeant Patterson seemed to take personal pleasure in making our lives miserable, but I thrived under the structure and discipline. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who respected hard work and determination, over connections and politics. My platoon was a mix of kids from all over the country. There was Rodriguez from East LA, tough as nails but with a wicked sense of humor. Thompson from rural Montana, quiet and steady, who could field strip a rifle blindfolded. Chen from Seattle, brilliant with technology but hopeless at physical, training until we all started helping her improve. We became a family of sorts, united by our shared misery and common goal. During the rare moments of downtime, we'd share stories about home, about what we'd left behind and what we hoped to return to. I told them about my Mustang, about the years I'd spent rebuilding her, about how she represented everything I'd accomplished on my own. Damn, Martinez, Rodriguez said one night as we sat cleaning our rifles. You really built that whole engine yourself? Every bolt, I said proudly. It took me 6 months just to get the timing right. My brother would flip for a car like that, Thompson added. He's been trying to restore a '67 Camaro for like 10 years. Those conversations made me homesick in the best possible way. I couldn't wait to get back to Bakersfield, to slide behind the wheel of my Mustang, to feel that rumbling V8 come to life under my foot. The car wasn't just a possession. It was my connection to home, to the person I'd been before the Army, started reshaping me into someone stronger. Phone calls home were limited and precious. Once a week for exactly 10 minutes, we could call family. Most of my calls went to Mom and Dad, who filled me in on neighborhood gossip and assured me that everyone was proud of what I was doing. Marcus was usually out or busy when I called, which didn't surprise me. We'd never been particularly close, and I knew he thought my military service was just another phase I was going through. About 6 weeks into training, I managed to catch Marcus on the phone. He sounded different, stressed, maybe even a little guilty. How's my baby doing? I asked, referring to the Mustang. Your what? Oh, the car. Yeah, it's fine. Running is good. Are you starting it up like I asked? And checking the tire pressure? Yeah, I'm taking care of it. Something in his tone bothered me, but I only had 10 minutes and wanted to hear about other things too. We talked briefly about his job search, still unsuccessful, and Mom's garden, thriving despite the heat. And then my time was up. The next. Few weeks flew by in a blur of field exercises, weapons training, and physical conditioning. I was getting stronger every day, both physically and mentally. The scared girl from Bakersfield was transforming into a soldier, someone who could handle pressure and make quick decisions under stress. It was during week 9 of training that everything fell apart. I was in the middle of a particularly brutal obstacle course when Drill Sergeant Patterson called me over. His expression was grim, and my heart immediately started racing. In basic training, being singled out usually meant trouble. "Martinez, you need to call home. Family emergency." My blood turned to ice. A family emergency could mean anything. Mom, Dad, even Marcus. I'd heard horror stories about trainees getting devastating news from home, about parents dying while their children were stuck hundreds of miles away, unable to help. The phone call was arranged immediately. I sat in the company commander's office, hands shaking as I dialed home. Mom answered on the second ring. "Jessica? Oh, honey, thank God you called." "Mom, what's wrong? Is everyone okay?" "We're all fine, sweetheart, but there's something you need to know about Marcus. About your car." My car. My beautiful, perfect Mustang that I'd trusted my brother to protect. The pit in my stomach grew larger. "What about my car?" Mom's voice cracked. "He sold it, Jessica. Marcus sold your Mustang 3 days ago." A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. The words hit me like a physical blow. Sold it. Marcus had sold my Mustang. 3 years of my life, every penny I'd saved, every weekend spent covered in grease and motor oil, gone. "What do you mean he sold it?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. Mom was crying now. "Jessica, we had no idea. We thought the car was still in the garage. Marcus told us you'd given him permission to move it to a storage facility. We only found out yesterday when Mrs. Chen saw some stranger driving it through downtown." The room started spinning. I gripped the phone so hard. My knuckles went white. "Where is he? Where's Marcus?" "He's not here, honey. When your father confronted him, Marcus said he needed the money more than you did. He said you were off playing soldier and wouldn't need a car for months anyway. Then he packed a bag and left. We haven't seen him since. Playing soldier. Those words cut deeper than any insult Drill Sergeant Patterson had ever screamed at me. This wasn't some game. I was serving my country, pushing myself harder than I'd ever been pushed, becoming someone stronger and more disciplined. And my own brother saw it as playing. "How much did he get for it?" I managed to ask. "We don't know exactly. Your father tried calling the buyer, but the phone number Marcus left was disconnected. We think it was around $8,000. $8,000. My Mustang was worth at least 15, maybe 20 with all the work I'd put into her. Marcus hadn't just stolen from me. He'd sold her for scraps to some quick cash buyer who probably didn't even know what he was getting." The company commander, Captain Rodriguez, had been sitting quietly at his desk during the call. When I hung up, he looked at me with genuine sympathy. "Take all the time you need, Private Martinez. This kind of situation, it's not easy." But I didn't have time. Basic training didn't stop for family drama or broken hearts. I had 3 more weeks to graduate, 3 more weeks to prove I belonged here. Falling apart wasn't an option. "I'm okay, sir. I can handle this." Captain Rodriguez studied me for a moment. "You sure? We can arrange emergency leave if you need to go home and deal with this." Emergency leave would mean falling behind my training cycle, possibly having to start over with a new class. Months of additional time away from home, away from any chance of getting my car back or making Marcus face what he'd done. "No, sir. I want to finish with my class." The next 3 weeks were the hardest of my entire life. During the day, I threw myself into training with an intensity that worried even my drill sergeants. I volunteered for extra duty, pushed myself through physical training until my body screamed, studied field manuals until my eyes burned. Anything to keep my mind off what was happening back home. But at night, lying in my bunk listening to 30 other women breathe and shift in their sleep, the anger consumed me. I'd picture Marcus's face when he handed over my keys to some stranger. I'd imagine him counting out $8,000 in cash while my beautiful Mustang drove away forever. The betrayal felt like poison in my veins. Rodriguez noticed my mood shift immediately. "Martinez, you've been wound tighter than a spring since that phone call. What's eating at you?" I couldn't tell her the whole truth. How could I explain that? My brother's betrayal felt worse than any enemy bullet? How could I make her understand that losing that car meant losing a piece of my identity? "Family stuff?" I said finally. "I'll work through it." "Your brother sold your ride, didn't he?" I stared at her in shock. I'd never mentioned the details to anyone. "Chen overheard you talking to Thompson about it. Word travels fast in a platoon." Rodriguez sat down on the edge of my bunk. "My cousin pulled something similar when I was deployed in Afghanistan. Sold my motorcycle while I was overseas and said I'd never know the difference." "What did you do?" "When I got back, I beat the hell out of him." Rodriguez grinned grimly. "Then I took him to small claims court and garnished his wages for 2 years. Family or not, stealing is stealing." That conversation planted a seed in my mind. Marcus thought he could get away with this because I was stuck at basic training, powerless to stop him. He thought I'd come home defeated, maybe angry, but ultimately helpless. He had no idea what the Army was turning me into. Graduation day arrived with typical Missouri heat and humidity. My parents drove up from California, tears streaming down Mom's face as she watched me march across that parade ground. Dad's chest puffed out with pride when I received my certificate. For a moment, looking at them in the stands, I almost forgot about Marcus and the Mustang. Almost. During family time after the ceremony, Dad pulled me aside. "We're so proud of you, mija. What you've accomplished here, the way you've handled everything. You're stronger than any of us realized. Have you heard from Marcus?" Dad's expression darkened. "He called once asking for money. I told him he'd burned that bridge. Your mother wanted to help him, but I put my foot down. What he did to you..." Dad shook his head. "That boy has lost his way. Do you know where he is? Last we heard, he was staying with some friends in Modesto. But Jessica, you need to be careful. Marcus is desperate right now, and desperate people do stupid things." I hugged my parents goodbye and promised to call when I got to my next duty station, Fort Gordon, Georgia, for advanced individual training in military police. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Marcus was out there spending my money and avoiding consequences, I was learning how to investigate crimes and arrest people who broke the law. AIT was different from basic training, more focused on job-specific skills, less emphasis on breaking us down and building us back up. I excelled in the coursework: criminal law, evidence collection, patrol procedures. My instructors praised my attention to detail and natural instincts for investigation work. But every spare moment, I was researching Marcus. I called old friends in Bakersfield, checked social media accounts, even hired a private investigator with some of my saved pay. Slowly, a picture emerged of my brother's activities over the past few months. The PI, a retired cop named Detective Walsh, delivered his report over the phone. "Your brother's been living beyond his means for a while now. Gambling debts, credit, card bills, borrowed money from at least 6 different people. The car sale was probably desperation, not malice. That doesn't make it right." No, it doesn't. But it might help explain his mindset. According to my sources, he's been telling people that you abandoned the family to join the military, that you cared more about playing soldier than helping out at home. There it was again. Playing soldier. The narrative Marcus had built to justify his actions. In his mind, I was the selfish one for pursuing my dreams instead of staying home to subsidize his failures. Where is he now? That's where it gets interesting. He's not in Modesto anymore. My contacts say he moved to Las Vegas about 3 weeks ago. Apparently, he's been bragging about a big score, talking about buying into some business opportunity. Las Vegas, Sin City, the perfect place for someone like Marcus to blow through $8,000 in record time. I could picture him at blackjack tables and slot machines, convinced that his luck was finally turning around, but Detective Walsh wasn't finished. There's something else you should know. The buyer of your car, I tracked him down. A guy named Steve Patterson runs a small used car lot in Fresno. He still has the Mustang. My heart stopped. He still has it? Apparently, he bought it as an investment, planning to flip it to a collector. But he's had trouble finding the right buyer. The car's been sitting on his lot for 2 months. What's he asking for? $18,000. $18,000. More than twice what Marcus had sold it for, but still reasonable considering all the work I'd put into the car. The problem was, I didn't have $18,000. Military pay was decent, but not spectacular, and I'd been sending money home to help my parents deal with Marcus's debts. Detective Walsh, I need you to do something for me. Contact this Patterson guy and tell him the car was stolen. Give him my information. Explain that I'm the legal owner and that my brother had no right to sell it. I can do that, but without proof of theft charges being filed, he's not going to just hand the car over. He paid for it in good faith. Then I guess I need to file theft charges. The decision felt both liberating and terrifying. Filing criminal charges against my own brother would destroy any remaining relationship we had, and would tear our family apart. But Marcus had made his choice when he decided my dreams were worth less than his immediate needs. I called the Kern County Sheriff's Department from Fort Gordon. The deputy who took my report, Officer Janet Mills, was sympathetic but realistic. Ma'am, family disputes over property can be complicated. Do you have any documentation proving ownership of the vehicle? I had everything. Registration in my name, insurance records, even receipts for major parts purchases. The paper trail clearly established me as the legal owner. The problem is going to be proving that your brother didn't have permission to sell it, Officer Mills explained. He's going to claim you gave him authority to handle your affairs while you were away. I have witnesses, my parents, neighbors, the mechanic who helped me with some of the work. Everyone knew I wanted the car protected, not sold. That's good. We'll need statements from all of them. Also, you mentioned he left a phone number with the buyer that was disconnected. Yes, the detective I hired confirmed it. That shows intent to defraud. It's not just a family dispute, it's fraud and theft. I'll open a case file and put out a BOLO alert for your brother. BOLO. Be on the lookout. Marcus Martinez was now officially a wanted man. The next few weeks passed in a blur of police reports, witness statements, and legal paperwork. My parents were devastated, but supportive. Several neighbors came forward to confirm that I'd never given permission for the car to be sold. Even Tommy Kowalski from Henderson's Auto Parts provided a statement about my attachment to the Mustang. Meanwhile, my AIT training was reaching its climax. Final exams in criminal law, practical exercises in arrest procedures, weapons qualification with the standard military police sidearm. I was becoming proficient in exactly the skills I needed to track down my brother and bring him to justice. The breakthrough came during my last week of training. Detective Walsh called with an update. Found him. Marcus is in Las Vegas just like we suspected, but he's not gambling anymore. What's he doing? He got arrested 3 days ago. Assault charges. Apparently got into a fight at a casino when his credit ran out. He's currently sitting in Clark County Jail. Can't make bail. Perfect. Marcus had managed to get himself locked up in Nevada while being wanted for theft in California. His situation was about to get much more complicated. Detective Walsh, I need you to contact the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Tell them we have an active warrant for Marcus Martinez on felony theft charges in California. They'll hold him for extradition. Already on it. Should have him transferred within the week. I graduated from military police school with honors and a clear sense of purpose. My first duty assignment would be Fort Bragg, North Carolina. But before I reported, I had 30 days of leave time coming to me. 30 days to go home and watch my brother face the consequences of his actions. The flight back to California felt like a victory lap. I was no longer the girl who'd left Bakersfield 8 months ago. I was a trained military police officer, equipped with knowledge of criminal law and investigation techniques. Marcus had picked the wrong sister to mess with. Mom and Dad met me at the airport, both looking older but prouder than I'd ever seen them. The drive home was bittersweet, familiar streets and landmarks, but everything felt different now. I was different. Marcus called yesterday, Mom said quietly as we pulled into the driveway. From jail. He wanted us to bail him out. What did you tell him? I told him he made his bed, Dad replied firmly. Your mother wanted to help, but I reminded her what he did to you. Family doesn't steal from family. That evening, I drove Dad's truck to Patterson's auto sales in Fresno. My Mustang sat in the back corner of the lot, covered with a thin layer of dust, but otherwise exactly as I'd left her. Deep forest green paint still gleaming, chrome wheels still perfect, every detail exactly as I remembered. Steve Patterson was a decent guy who'd gotten caught in the middle of a family drama. When I showed him my military ID and the police reports, he shook his head in disgust. I should have known something was fishy when your brother insisted on cash and wouldn't provide any maintenance records. A car that nice, restored that well. The owner would have documentation. I understand you paid good money for her. I'm not asking you to just give her back. Actually, I've been thinking about this since your detective called. What your brother did was wrong, and I don't want to profit from someone else's crime. Patterson held out the keys. Take your car home. I'll go after your brother for the money he owes me. I almost started crying right there in his dusty sales lot. After 8 months of betrayal and legal battles, someone was finally doing the right thing just because it was right. The Mustang started immediately, that familiar rumble of the 5.0-liter V8 sending vibrations through my bones. I'd forgotten how powerful she felt, how perfectly the clutch engaged, how sweetly the engine sang when I revved her up. This was more than getting my car back. This was reclaiming a piece of my identity that Marcus had tried to steal. But the story wasn't over. Marcus was still sitting in a California jail cell, and I had every intention of making sure he understood exactly what his betrayal had cost him. The Kern County Jail was a concrete fortress that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams. I'd been inside similar facilities during my military police training, but never as a victim seeking justice against my own flesh and blood. The visiting room was divided by thick plexiglass, conversations conducted through scratchy phones that had seen better decades. Marcus looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was greasy and unkempt, his face gaunt from jail food and stress. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on his frame. He'd lost at least 20 pounds since I'd seen him last. But what struck me most was his eyes. Gone was Hamsaidir, the cocky arrogance I remembered. In its place was something that looked almost like fear. He picked up the phone with trembling hands. Jess? Jesus, you look different? I kept my voice steady, professional. 8 months of military discipline had taught me to control my emotions, to present a calm facade even when my heart was racing. Yeah, I mean, you look good, strong. The military's been good to you. The awkward small talk felt surreal. Here we were, separated by bulletproof glass because he'd committed a felony against me, and he was commenting on my physical appearance like we'd bumped into each other at the grocery store. We need to talk about what you did. Marcus's face crumpled. Jess, I can explain everything. I was desperate, okay? I owed some people money, serious people. They were threatening me, threatening Mom and Dad if I didn't pay up. So you stole my car. I borrowed against it. I was going to get it back, I swear. There was this business deal, this guy in Vegas who promised huge returns on investment. I thought I could flip the money, pay back what I owed, and have enough left over to buy your car back before you even got home. The same old Marcus. Always chasing the easy money. Always convinced the next scheme would solve all his problems. What made it worse was that he actually seemed to believe his own lies. Marcus, you sold my car to a stranger for $8,000. She was worth twice that. You gave the buyer a fake phone number and disappeared. That's not borrowing. That's theft and fraud. The phone thing was an accident. I changed numbers and forgot to tell him. Stop lying to me. The words came out harsher than I intended, echoing in the small visiting booth. Several other inmates and their visitors turned to look at us. I lowered my voice, leaning closer to the glass. I hired a private investigator. I know about the gambling debts, the credit cards, the money you borrowed from friends. I know you've been telling people I abandoned the family to play soldier. Marcus flinched at those last words. I never said that. Detective Walsh has witnesses. You've been painting me as the selfish sister who ran off and left you to deal with family problems. But what family problems, Marcus? The only problem was you living beyond your means and expecting everyone else to bail you out. Tears started running down his face. Not the crocodile tears he'd used to manipulate our parents for years. These looked real. Raw. Desperate. You don't understand the pressure I was under. These weren't regular creditors, Jess. These were dangerous people. They knew where Mom and Dad lived, knew your schedule at work. They were going to hurt people if I didn't pay. Then why didn't you ask for help? Why didn't you call the police? Because I was scared. Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want my little sister to see what a complete failure I'd become. There it was. The truth is buried under months of lies and justification. Marcus hadn't stolen my car because he was evil. He'd done it because he was weak. A coward who'd rather betray his family than face his own failures. How much do you owe? Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Total? About $30,000. The car money helped, but it barely made a dent. $30,000. No wonder he'd been desperate. But stealing from me hadn't solved his problem. It had just added criminal charges to his list of troubles. Who are these dangerous people? Loan sharks. Started with one guy, Diego Vargas, who operates out of a pool hall in East Bakersfield. When I couldn't pay him back, he introduced me to his associates. Pretty soon I owed money to 4 different people, all of them charging interest that doubled every month. I'd learned about loan sharking operations during my criminal justice training. Illegal lending with astronomical interest rates, usually backed by the threat of violence. People who got involved with loan sharks rarely found their way out without serious consequences. Marcus, you realize these people aren't going to just forget about the money because you're in jail, right? They're going to keep charging interest, and when you get out, you'll owe even more. I know. His voice was barely a whisper. I don't know what to do. Looking at my brother through that plexiglass, I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Yes, I was still angry about the car. Yes, he'd betrayed my trust in the worst possible way. But sitting in that jail cell, facing felony charges and mounting debt to dangerous people, Marcus was paying a price that might be higher than what he'd stolen from me. The district attorney offered me a plea deal, he continued. Plead guilty. To grand theft auto, pay full restitution, serve 18 months. But I don't have restitution money, and 18 months in state prison might be a death sentence if Vargas and his crew decide I'm more trouble than I'm worth. What kind of restitution are they asking for? $15,000. The prosecutor said, that's the fair market value of your car based on expert appraisal. $15,000. I'd gotten my Mustang back, but the legal system still required Marcus to pay for what he'd stolen. The money wouldn't come to me. It would go to the state as part of his criminal sentence. I have an idea, I said slowly, but you're not going to like it. Marcus leaned forward eagerly. Anything. I'll do anything to fix this. First, you take the plea deal. 18 months is better than the 5 years you could get if this goes to trial. Second, I'm going to help you with the restitution, but not the way you think. What do you mean? I mean you're going to earn it. When you get out of prison, you're going to work for me. Real work, not some get-rich-quick scheme. I'll advance the restitution money to keep you out of additional trouble, but you'll pay me back every penny with interest. Marcus stared at me through the glass. You'd do that? After what I did to you? I'd do it for Mom and Dad, who don't deserve to lose both their children over your stupidity. And I'd do it because, despite everything, you're still my brother. What kind of work? I'm being stationed at Fort Bragg. There are plenty of auto shops around Fayetteville that need mechanics. You'll get a job, live in a cheap apartment, and send me every extra penny until the debt is paid off. No gambling, no schemes, no shortcuts. For how long? However long it takes. Could be 3 years, could be 5, depending on how hard you work and how serious you are about making this right. Marcus was quiet for a long time, processing the offer. Finally, he nodded. Okay, yes, I'll do it. There's more. You also need to deal with Vargas and his associates. I can't help you with that directly, but I know people who can. What kind of people? The kind who don't like illegal loan operations in their jurisdiction. You're going to cooperate fully with law enforcement to shut down Vargas's business. In exchange, they'll put you in protective custody during your sentence and help relocate you when you get out. You want me to become a snitch? I want you to do the right thing for once in your life. How many other people do you think Vargas has trapped the same way he trapped you? How many families has his operation destroyed? The visiting time was almost up. A guard was making his way down the row, tapping on glass to signal the end of sessions. Think about it, I told Marcus. You have 2 choices. Take my offer, serve your time, and start over with a chance to make things right. Or roll the dice with dangerous people and hope you're lucky enough to survive whatever comes next. I hung up the phone and walked out of the jail without looking back. The decision was Marcus's to make, and I'd done everything I could to give him a path forward. 3 days later, he called our parents to accept the plea deal. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and logistical arrangements. Marcus's defense attorney, a public defender named Sarah Chen, was impressed with the prosecution's willingness to accept such a favorable plea agreement. Your brother's lucky to have you in his corner, she told me over coffee. Most victims, in cases like this, want maximum punishment, not rehabilitation. Maximum punishment doesn't help anyone. Marcus made a terrible decision, but he's not a career criminal. He's a screw-up who got in over his head. The cooperation agreement with the district attorney's office is particularly beneficial. By providing information about Diego Vargas's loan operation, your brother's helping law enforcement build a case against people who prey on desperate individuals. Detective Walsh had been working closely with the Financial Crimes Unit to track Vargas's network. The information Marcus provided led to search warrants, surveillance operations, and eventually the arrest of 6 people involved in illegal lending activities. Your brother's testimony is going to put some very bad people behind bars, Detective Walsh reported. Vargas alone was running loans to over 40 people, charging interest rates that would make the mafia blush. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus's weakness and poor decisions had inadvertently helped law enforcement dismantle a criminal organization that had been operating for years. Meanwhile, I was preparing for my move to Fort Bragg. The Mustang needed some minor repairs after sitting idle for months. New battery, fresh fluids, tire rotation. Working on her again felt therapeutic, a return to the meditative process of maintenance and care that had sustained me through difficult times. Rodriguez called me the night before I was scheduled to leave California. She'd completed her own advanced training and was heading to Fort Hood in Texas. Heard you got your ride back. Yeah, she's running better than ever. And your brother? Facing the consequences of his actions, but he's got a chance to make things right. You're a better person than I am, Martinez. I'd have let my cousin rot in jail. Family's complicated. Sometimes you have to save people from themselves. The drive from California to North Carolina took 3 days, but I wasn't in a hurry. Interstate highways stretched out in front of my Mustang like ribbons of possibility. The rumble of the V8 engine, the feel of the steering wheel in my hands, the satisfaction of driving something I'd built with my own labor. It all felt like coming home. Somewhere in New Mexico, as the sun set behind me and painted the desert, in shades of orange and gold, I thought about the person I'd been when this whole ordeal started. That girl had been defined by what she owned, by the car that represented her independence and achievement. The woman driving east toward her new life understood that real strength came from character, not possessions. Marcus had tried to steal my car, but he'd accidentally given me something more valuable, proof that I could handle anything life threw at me. Betrayal, legal battles, family drama. I'd faced it all and emerged stronger. Fort Bragg welcomed me with typical military efficiency. Check-in procedures, barracks assignment, orientation briefings. I was now Military Police Officer Jessica Martinez, assigned to the 503rd Military Police Battalion. My first duty assignment would be investigating crimes on base and maintaining order among 60,000 soldiers and their families. The irony was perfect. 6 months ago, I'd been the victim of a crime, helpless to stop my brother from stealing. What mattered most to me? Now I was the person other victims would come to for justice. The experience with Marcus had taught me something valuable about the psychology of both criminals and victims. Lessons that would make me a better military police officer. But the story wasn't finished. Marcus still had to serve his time, and I still had to decide whether to trust him with the second chance I'd offered. The real test would come in 18 months, when he walked out of prison and had to prove he'd learned something from his mistakes. Until then, I had my own life to build, a career in law enforcement, new challenges to face, new people to meet, and whenever I needed reminding of how far I'd come, I could walk out to the base parking lot and see my deep forest green Mustang waiting faithfully for the next adventure. 18 months later, I was standing outside North Carolina State Prison, in Raleigh, watching inmates file through the release gates with their plastic bags of personal belongings. Some had family waiting, tearful reunions and cautious embraces. Others walked out alone, disappearing into the anonymity of bus stations and halfway houses. Marcus emerged looking like a different person. Prison had hardened him physically. His shoulders were broader, his face leaner, his movements more controlled. But there was something else in his posture, something I'd never seen before. Humility. He spotted me leaning against the Mustang and stopped dead in his tracks. For a moment, I thought he might turn around and walk back through those gates. Instead, he approached slowly, carrying a small duffel bag and wearing clothes that had been donated by a church charity. "You came." I said I would. Marcus stood awkwardly beside the passenger door, unsure whether he was welcome in the car he'd stolen. The silence stretched between us like a chasm filled with 18 months of unspoken words. "Get in," I said finally. The drive to Fayetteville was tense. Marcus stared out the window at landscapes he hadn't seen as a free man since before his arrest. I'd prepared a dozen speeches during the drive from Fort Bragg, but sitting next to him now, all my carefully planned words seemed inadequate. "How was it?" I asked eventually. "Educational." Marcus's voice was different too, quieter, more thoughtful. Learned a lot about myself, about the choices I made. I had plenty of time to think. And I realized that everything you said in that visiting room was right. I was weak, a coward. I hurt the people who loved me most because I was too proud to ask for help and too scared to face my problems. These weren't the hollow apologies I'd heard from Marcus before. There was weight behind his words, a gravity that came from real consequence and genuine reflection. "The anger management classes helped," he continued. So did the financial literacy program. Turns out there are better ways to handle money problems than borrowing from criminals and stealing from family. I'd kept in touch with his progress through official channels. Exemplary behavior, completion of multiple rehabilitation programs, even earning his GED after dropping out of college years earlier. On paper, Marcus Martinez looked like a model prisoner who'd used his time productively. Tell me about Vargas. Marcus's jaw tightened. His trial starts next month. I'll have to testify about the loan operations, the threats, and how the whole system worked. My attorney says he's looking at 15 to 20 years based on the evidence we provided. Are you scared? Terrified. But it's the right thing to do. Should have been done years ago, before other people got trapped the same way I did. The Marcus I'd known before would never have admitted fear or put himself at risk to help others. Prison had either broken him completely or taught him something valuable about courage. We pulled into the parking lot of a modest apartment complex on the south side of Fayetteville. The Pinewood Gardens weren't much to look at. Generic 2-story. Buildings surrounding a courtyard with a swimming pool that had seen better days. But the rent was affordable, and the location was convenient to several auto repair shops where Marcus might find work. This is it, I said, handing him a key. 1 bedroom. Apartment on the 2nd floor. Rent's paid through the end of the month, utilities are connected, and I stocked the refrigerator with basics. Marcus took the key with shaking hands. Jess, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me in 3 years when you've paid back every penny you owe. The apartment was sparse but functional. A futon that doubled as a bed, a small television, a kitchen table with 2 chairs. I'd furnished it with items from thrift stores and military surplus outlets. Nothing fancy, but everything Marcus needed to start over. There's a bus route that runs every 30 minutes to the main commercial district, I explained, showing him a transit map I'd posted on the refrigerator. Job interviews start Monday. I've already contacted 5 auto shops that are looking for experienced mechanics. You set up interviews for me? I opened the door. Whether you walk through it depends on you. Over the next week, I watched Marcus navigate his first days of freedom with a mixture of determination and terror. Simple tasks like grocery shopping or riding the bus seemed to overwhelm him initially. 18 months of institutional life had eroded his confidence in basic social interactions. But he showed up for every job interview dressed in the cheap suit I'd bought him, armed with references from prison work programs and a detailed explanation of his mechanical experience. On Thursday, Joe Brennan from Brennan's Automotive called with an offer. Your brother knows his way around an engine, Brennan told me over the phone. Impressed the hell out of me during the practical test. But, I'll be honest, I'm taking a risk hiring an ex-con. If he screws up, it reflects on me. He won't screw up. You sound pretty confident for someone whose car he stole. Because I know what prison costs him. He's not the same person who made that mistake. Marcus started work the following Monday, at $8 an hour. Barely above minimum wage, but honest work with the possibility of advancement. Brennan's was a small operation that specialized in classic car restoration, exactly the kind of environment where Marcus's skills would be valued. His first paycheck was $320 after taxes. He brought it to me unopened, like a trophy. Here's the first payment on what I owe you. I looked at the check and did some quick math. At this rate, paying back the $15,000 I'd advanced for his restitution would take decades. Marcus, you need money for food, bus fare, basic living expenses. You can't give me your entire paycheck. Then how am I supposed to pay you back? By proving you've changed. By building a life that doesn't require bailouts from family members. Money is important, but it's not everything. We worked out a reasonable payment plan, $100 a month, which would still take over 10 years to clear his debt, but left him enough money to survive. More importantly, I established other conditions for our arrangement. No gambling. Of any kind. Weekly check-ins to discuss his progress and challenges. Mandatory attendance at a financial counseling program offered through the county. and complete honesty about his activities and associations. If I find out you're lying to me about anything, where you've been, who you're spending time with, how you're spending your money, the deal is off, I explained. I'll call in the entire debt immediately, and you can figure out how to pay. It from a homeless shelter. Understood. The first few months were rocky. Marcus struggled with the monotony of his new life, the loneliness of having no friends or social connections, the shame of explaining his situation to potential romantic partners. He called me several times in tears, overwhelmed by the weight of his circumstances. I don't know if I can do this, Jess. Everything is so hard now. People look at me differently when they find out I'm an ex-con. Women won't date me. I can't even get a credit card to start rebuilding my credit. What did you expect? That serving 18 months would erase the consequences of your actions? That you'd get out of prison and immediately return to the life you had before? No, but I hoped it would be easier. Easy doesn't build character, Marcus. Every day you choose to keep going instead of giving up, you're becoming the person you should have been all along. The turning point came during his 6th month of freedom. Brennan's had received a challenging restoration project, a 1969 Dodge Charger that had been sitting in a barn for 30 years. The engine was seized, the transmission was shot, and the electrical system was completely fried. Most of the other mechanics looked at the project and shook their heads. Too much work, too many unknowns, not worth the effort. But Marcus saw opportunity. Give me 3 months, he told Brennan. I'll have that Charger running better than it did when it rolled off the assembly line. Brennan was skeptical, but agreed to let Marcus tackle the project as a learning experience. For the next 12 weeks, Marcus arrived at work an hour early and stayed 2 hours late, methodically rebuilding every system on that car. He studied wiring diagrams, researched parts compatibility, and solved problems that would have stumped mechanics with twice his experience. When the Charger finally roared to life, the entire shop gathered around to watch. The owner, who'd been prepared to scrap the car, had tears in his eyes as he listened to that perfectly tuned V8 engine. Son, he told Marcus, you just saved my father's car. This Charger belonged to him, and I thought she was gone forever. That project changed everything for Marcus. Word spread through the local car community about the ex-con who'd performed a mechanical miracle at Brennan's Automotive. Classic car owners started specifically requesting Marcus for their restoration work. His reputation grew, and so did his paycheck. Brennan promoted him to lead restoration specialist with a raise to $15 an hour. Marcus started earning overtime pay by taking on side projects during evenings and weekends. His monthly payments to me increased from $100 to $300, then $500. At this rate, you'll have the debt paid off in 4 years instead of 10, I calculated during one of our weekly check-ins. Maybe sooner, Marcus replied. Brennan's talking about opening a second location focused entirely on classic car restoration. He wants me to manage it. But the real measure of Marcus's transformation wasn't financial. It was personal. He started dating a woman named Linda Torres, a nurse at the local VA hospital who'd been through her own struggles with addiction and recovery. Their relationship was built on mutual understanding of second chances and hard-earned wisdom. He enrolled in night classes at Fayetteville Technical Community College, working toward an associate degree in automotive technology. His grades were excellent, his attendance perfect. The professors who knew his background treated him with respect earned through consistent performance. Most importantly, he began volunteering with a program that helped other ex-offenders find employment and housing. Marcus would meet with men and women leaving prison, sharing his story and offering practical advice about rebuilding their lives. Every person I help makes my own mistake mean something more, he explained to me. If I can prevent one person from making the choices I made, then maybe all of this suffering wasn't wasted. During his 2nd year of freedom, Marcus testified in the trial of Diego Vargas and 5 associates charged with operating an illegal lending enterprise. His testimony was devastating. Detailed accounts of threats, documentation of loan terms, descriptions of collection methods that bordered on extortion. Vargas received 18 years in federal prison. His associates got sentences ranging from 5 to 12 years. The judge specifically thanked Marcus for his cooperation and courage in helping to dismantle an organization that had victimized dozens of people. "Mr. Martinez," the judge said, "during sentencing, your willingness to take responsibility for your actions and assist law enforcement demonstrates genuine rehabilitation. You should be proud of the person you've become." After the trial, Marcus called me with news that surprised even him. "Brennan wants to make me a partner in the business. He's offering me a 20% stake in exchange for managing the new restoration facility." "What did you tell him?" "That I needed to discuss it with my sister first. That I don't make major decisions without consulting the person who saved my life." Partnership in an auto restoration business would provide Marcus with real financial security and professional respect. But it would also require a significant time commitment and managerial responsibilities he'd never handled before. "Do you think you're ready for that kind of responsibility?" 2 years ago, I would have said yes immediately, without thinking through the implications. Now, I know it's going to be the hardest thing I've ever done, and I might fail. But I also know that failure isn't the end of the world. It's just information about what needs to be improved. That conversation convinced me that Marcus had truly changed. The old Marcus would have seen partnership as a shortcut to easy money. The new Marcus understood it as an opportunity to prove himself worthy of trust and success. "Take the partnership," I advised. "But remember, success doesn't erase the past. It just gives you a platform to keep making better choices." As I drove back to Fort Bragg that evening, I thought about the journey we'd all been on. Marcus had lost everything: his freedom, his family's trust, his self-respect, before finding the strength to rebuild from nothing. My parents had watched their son destroy himself and somehow found the grace to support his redemption. And I had learned that true strength sometimes meant extending mercy instead of demanding justice. The Mustang's engine hummed contentedly as we cruised through the North Carolina countryside. She was still the same car I'd built with my own hands, still the symbol of everything I could accomplish through hard work and determination. But now she represented something else too: the power of forgiveness, the possibility of second chances, and the unbreakable bonds of family tested by fire and found strong enough to survive. 3 years had passed since Marcus walked out of prison, and I was preparing for my own transition. My enlistment with the Army was coming to an end, and I'd accepted a position with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. 8 years of military police work had taught me that I loved solving puzzles, catching bad guys, and bringing justice to people who'd been wronged. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I was finishing my final case reports at Fort Bragg. "Jess?" Marcus's voice was shaky, uncertain. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you react." My blood ran cold. Over the past 3 years, calls that started with those words usually meant Marcus was about to confess to some mistake or poor decision. I'd learned to brace myself for disappointment. "What happened?" "Nothing bad. Actually, something good. But it involves your car." "My Mustang." I felt that familiar protective instinct surge through me. "Marcus, if you've touched my car without permission..." "I haven't touched her. But someone else has, and you need to know about it." He explained that a collector from Charlotte had been visiting Brennan's restoration shop, looking at various projects. When he saw photographs of Marcus's work, particularly the Dodge Charger restoration, he'd been impressed enough to commission a complete concourse-level restoration of his own 1967 Shelby Cobra. This guy, Richard Steinberg, he's serious money, owns half the commercial real estate in Charlotte, but he's also a legitimate car enthusiast who appreciates craftsmanship. What does this have to do with my Mustang? He saw her in the parking lot when he came to check on the Cobra project, asked whose car it was, what kind of work had been done on her. When I told him the story, about how you built her, about what happened between us, about how she represents your journey. He made an offer. My heart stopped. What kind of offer? $65,000. Cash. He wants to add her to his private collection. $65,000. More than 3 times what I'd originally invested in the car, enough money to buy a house or start a business. It was a staggering amount for a 20-year-old Mustang, but collectors paid premium prices for cars with perfect restorations and compelling stories. Marcus, you told him no, right? You explained that the car isn't for sale? Silence on the other end of the line. Marcus? I told him I'd discuss it with you. Jess, this is life-changing money. You could do anything you wanted with that kind of financial freedom. I don't want financial freedom. I want my car. But think about it rationally. She's just a machine. Metal, plastic, and rubber. The memories, the accomplishment, the pride, that's all inside you. Selling her doesn't take away what you achieved. I hung up on him. For the next hour, I sat in my office staring at reports I couldn't focus on reading. Marcus was right about one thing. $65,000 would change my life. I could pay off my student loans, put a down payment on a house, even start the private investigation business I'd been dreaming about. From a purely financial perspective, selling made perfect sense. But the Mustang wasn't a financial asset. She was the physical manifestation of everything I'd learned. About persistence, craftsmanship, and taking pride in your work. She represented the girl who'd refused to accept limitations, who'd taught herself mechanical skills through trial and error, who'd built something beautiful with her own hands. More than that, she was the reason Marcus and I had found our way. Back to being family. His theft of the car had revealed his true character, but it had also revealed mine. The long journey from betrayal to forgiveness, from victimhood to strength, from anger to understanding, all of it was tied to that deep forest green Mustang sitting in the Fort Bragg parking lot. My phone rang again. This time it was Mom. Marcus. Told us about the offer. Your father and I think you should seriously consider it. Not you too. Misha, we're not saying you should sell. We're saying you should think about why you're keeping her. Is it because you love the car, or because you're afraid of letting go? That question haunted me for the rest of the week. I found myself visiting the Mustang every evening after work, running my hands over her familiar curves, listening to the engine idle in the parking lot. Was I holding on to her out of genuine attachment, or out of fear that selling would somehow diminish what she represented? On Friday, I drove to Fayetteville to see Marcus at his new restoration facility. Brennan's classic car restoration had grown into a successful business with 12 employees and a waiting list of clients. Marcus's transformation from convicted thief to respected businessman was complete, but I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this situation. Where exactly did Steinberg see my car? I asked. In the parking lot, like I said. Marcus, your shop is 15 miles from the main highway. Nobody just stumbles across this place. Why was a collector from Charlotte really here? Marcus looked uncomfortable. Okay, he didn't just happen to see the car. I might have mentioned it to him during our conversations about the Cobra. You told him about my Mustang specifically? I was proud of what you'd accomplished, and I thought maybe if you had enough money you wouldn't feel like you needed to keep working such a dangerous job. Criminal investigation isn't exactly safe, Jess. There it was. Marcus wasn't trying to broker a sale for my benefit. He was trying to protect me in his own misguided way. The reformed thief was still trying to control situations instead of letting people make their own choices. Marcus, I appreciate that you're worried about my safety, but I love my job. I'm good at it, and I'm perfectly capable of deciding what risks are worth taking. I know that. I've lost you once because of my stupidity. I can't bear the thought of losing you again because of random violence or some criminal who decides to target you. Then trust me to take care of myself. Trust that 8 years of military and police training taught me how to handle dangerous situations. And trust that I know the difference between taking calculated risks and being reckless. We talked for another hour about his fears, my career plans, and the complicated dynamics of our rebuilt relationship. Eventually, I agreed to meet with Steinberg, not because I was interested in selling, but because I wanted to understand his motivations for making such a generous offer. Richard Steinberg turned out to be a soft-spoken man in his 60s who genuinely loved automotive history. His collection included dozens of significant cars, each one meticulously maintained and occasionally driven. When he talked about the Mustang, his enthusiasm was infectious. "Cars like yours represent something important," he explained as we toured his climate-controlled garage. "They're proof that passion and skill can create beauty from ordinary materials. The story of how you built her, how she survived your brother's mistake, how she brought your family back together, that story makes her more than just another restored muscle car. If you understand how much she means to me, why are you trying to buy her? Because I think you're ready to let her go. Your brother told me about your new career, about the investigating business you want to start. $65,000 would give you the capital to build something even more meaningful than a perfectly restored car. And if I'm not ready, then she stays with you, where she belongs. I'm not trying to pressure you into anything. I'm simply offering you options." That night, I called Rodriguez, who'd become a successful detective with the Austin Police Department. We'd stayed in touch over the years, sharing war stories and career advice. "Sounds like you're overthinking this," she said after I explained the situation. "What does your gut tell you?" "That I love the car, but I love what she taught me more. And maybe it's time to take those lessons and build something new. There's your answer." The next morning, I called Steinberg and accepted his offer. The transaction took place at a bank in Charlotte, with all the proper paperwork and legal protections. When he handed me the certified check for $65,000, I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd been carrying a weight I didn't realize was there. Steinberg drove the Mustang away personally, promising to send me photos and updates on her care. Watching her disappear down the highway should have been heartbreaking, but instead it felt like watching a daughter leave for college. Proud, bittersweet, and full of anticipation for what came next. With the money from the sale, I started Martinez Investigations 6 months later. The business specialized in cases involving theft, fraud, and family disputes, problems I understood intimately. My military background and investigative training attracted clients who needed serious help with complex situations. Marcus was my first employee. His mechanical expertise proved invaluable for cases involving insurance fraud and stolen vehicle. Recovery. Working together professionally allowed us to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and shared purpose. 2 years later, Martinez Investigations had grown into a team of 6 investigators handling cases across 3 states. We'd recovered millions of dollars in stolen property, reunited families torn apart by deception, and brought justice to people who'd been victimized by criminals. The irony wasn't lost on me. The car that Marcus had stolen to solve his financial problems had ultimately provided the seed money for a business that helped other people solve their problems. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed our family had become the foundation for a partnership that made us both stronger. On the 3rd anniversary of selling the Mustang, Steinberg sent me a photograph. The car was parked in his garage next to a 1970 Plymouth Cuda and a 1963 Corvette split window. She looked exactly as I remembered her. Perfect paint gleaming under the showroom lights, chrome wheels spotless, every detail precisely maintained. But looking at that photograph, I felt something I hadn't expected. Gratitude that she was somewhere. She was appreciated, but no longer longing to have her back. The girl who'd built that car with desperate determination to prove herself had grown into a woman who no longer needed external validation of her worth. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Proud of you, sis, for everything." I texted back, "Proud of us. We both turned out better than anyone expected." And that, I realized, was the real victory. Not keeping the car or getting the money or even solving the case of my brother's betrayal. The real victory was learning that some things are worth more when you give them away, that forgiveness creates more value than revenge, and that the best way to honor what you've built is to use it as a foundation for building something even better. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.